Hello, welcome to the God Theory Podcast. This is episode 4, and we're going to be talking about the Pope. There's been a lot of positive press about him, but it's time to have some real talk about the Pope and the kind of policies that he may be behind. But David, this is kind of something. This was your idea.
Yes, and this is basically based off of the Pope. I was going to put a soundbite in from him, but he's speaking not English, so probably wouldn't be great for all the people who don't speak Italian. But I do have a translation here. Before we get into that, fuck the Pope.
Yeah, that's what I hear. So, how's your week been? You may be wondering. I know you were just wondering why my muscles are so sore.
I was wondering that. I was like, Jeremiah, your muscles, they sound pretty sore over the call.
You're correct then.
Specifically your tongue muscle, because that's the one I'm hearing right now.
Yeah, actually, that's not sore at all. But we just got back from a Spartan race. My wife and I. We're going for the trifecta this year, which is like you have to race do a little one, kind of a medium one, and a big one. So it's like the Goldilocks and the Three Bears of obstacle races. So we did the sprint, and then we've got a super. The sprint is it was 5 miles with 27 obstacles, and then we're gonna do the super, which I think is 8 to 10, I believe, with a bunch of obstacles. I don't know how many. And then the Beast, which is like a half marathon it's 13 to 20 miles or something like that with just a shit ton of obstacles. I don't know how many, but that's what we're trying to do, man. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun. Are you an obstacle race man yourself?
No, but I do watch Ninja Warrior.
Yeah, there was some stuff off that Ninja Warrior. There's one where you do the little monkey bar things and they ascend and descend, and just crap like that. It's pretty fun.
Good times. So you got down and dirty with the obstacle course?
Yeah, I was covered in mud. It was awesome. Felt good. But what about your week? What kind of things have you been doing?
Oh, well, it's just been school. We did standardized testing, which half of the school, just their parents opted them out of having to do it because it was this new thing related to the Common Core. And as soon as people hear the words Common Core, they're like, government, Obama, hashtag not my president, and they just get really distrustful.
Wait. So what are your thoughts about Common Core? Your profession is in teaching.
Yes, I am an educator, one might say. I really don't see the problem with it. I teach languages, and what the Common Core suggested was exactly what I was already doing, so I was like, oh yeah, well, that's fine. But most people have issues with the math. That's what you see a lot of those Facebook posts, this is the new math, I don't understand it, and I'm scared, and I'm nervous because I can't help my kid with his math homework anymore, and it's new and it's different, and I don't like it. And Obama.
Taking my guns.
Taking my guns.
Now taking my math.
Yeah, here's the problem with the way you learned how to do math. People who who are freaking out about this right now, you learned algorithms. You didn't understand how math works. You just learned some different heuristics to get you through math problems.
Right.
Like borrowing from a different column? What is that? That's stupid. Why are you so attached to that?
Yeah. And it's not how people do real-world math.
No, it's not. The way people do real-world math is the way they teach it in the Common Core, where you round up to the nearest easy numbers to work with and keep a running total of the numbers you rounded up with until you have your number.
Yeah. Numerical reasoning, we kind of know how that's done in psychology. So if I said, hey, David, what's 42 minus, what's a good example of this? Minus, I don't know, 6. A lot of people don't go, let's see, minus 6, 41, 40, 39, and count on their fingers, right? It's more about borrowing and subtracting. You're let me see, I know 6 plus 6 is 12, so 12, okay, so I'm going to take it down 6, it'll be a 6 number, 36, right?
Right.
I forgot what my original question was, but if it was minus 6, that's the answer.
That's a great example.
Yeah, thank you. It's the worst example.
Here, let's try a little easier one. Let's say let's say you're the cash register's broken and you're giving somebody change, right? Because that's a pretty real world example.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not really how we do math. So let's say your coffee that you bought costs $4.30, and you hand me a $20 bill, and and I have to make change in my head. I'm not gonna like take out a sheet of paper and be like 20.00 minus 4.30. Make sure those line up. All right, I'm gonna borrow, so I'm gonna mark off that, mark off that, mark off that. 2 goes down to 1, 10 goes down to 9, 10 goes down to 9. You know, like that's not how it's gonna be. What's going to happen is I'm going to be like, all right, well, $4, $4.30. It would take 70 cents to get to 5, and then another 15 to get to 20. So $15.70. That's your change.
Right, right.
That's how we do math. That's how people do math in the real world, and that's what the Common Core is essentially teaching. Like they're not only teaching that, they're teaching the stupid way as well, the old-fashioned way versus the new way. They're teaching them both, but there's just people like just put things on Facebook without fact-checking them, and then everybody. End result is like seriously 40% of the students at my school just opted out of the standardized testing this year, which kind of sucks because you need standardized testing to know which schools in the state are needing help and which ones are doing well. There's a reason we do those.
Yeah.
So it's just a pet peeve of mine.
Yeah, I can imagine. Jeez. Oh, sorry about that. Hopefully your kids weren't. Hopefully they did okay.
Like all the Common Core wants to do is say we want to make sure your kids understand how the math works and not just know the algorithms to get them through the next section. And then they complain, and these same people who complain about the new way of learning math, they're the same people who in a different context are going to bring up like, oh man, I don't even know why we learned math in school. I don't remember anything of the math I learned in school. Do you remember any of the math? No, I never used it, so yep, I never used it either, so I forgot it. Of course you did, because you never learned why the math worked. You just learned these weird formulas that you just forgot. Of course you forgot it. And then you complain that you forgot it, and then you complain that we're teaching them a way that actually makes sense so that they remember it.
Yeah, and there's so many opportunities to use math that people don't use. Like they're like, or another one is just testing stuff. But like, you know, like if you're like, oh man, so I cut through the middle of town, and you know, and the other person's like, well, I take the highway around town to avoid the traffic or whatever. And then you're like, actually, you can just close in those, and you can make a polygon and measure based on geometric principles, which one's shorter. And they're like, we'll just test it tomorrow, or even usually don't even test it. They're just like, I think mine's faster. I get there in probably like 15 minutes.
Probably like, yeah. When you have two qualifiers, like probably and like in the same sentence, you're not very confident about your
Yeah. It's sad. So maybe if people had a bit of affinity and less of a, like kind of this calculia-phobia, I believe is what it's called, it's the phobia of math, which, let's just talk about phobia for a second. Like, I'm just going to take a real quick PSA. Actually, before I do, I'm going to tell, like, there's going to be a future episode where I'm going to talk about why people do this and why Common Core and why a lot of things people make. I'm going to talk about decision making, the psychology of decision making. But before I do, yeah. So the PSA real quick is that what the fuck was I talking about? I started thinking about that episode.
People use the word phobia,
phobia.
But they don't know really what that means.
Can we please stop using phobia? Like homophobia. I hate when people use that. You're not phobic of homosexuals. You're just a bigoted asshole. Like, you can be a bigoted asshole, and you're gonna get all the hate in the world. You don't throw on the term homophobia because
gay people turn on my fight or flight or freeze reflex. I just really so I have acrophobia, which is fear of heights, right? So I'm doing the obstacles yesterday, and I can tell you I had a visceral response to some of them. I was like, I could not look down, and if I did, my hands started shaking so badly, and I started sweating, and all these thoughts, they're irrational, because I'm like, there are thousands of people who have gone through this. I think I was racer number 10,082. There's 10,081 people who have done this before me. Not a single person has fallen off. I know it's safe in my brain, but it is literally, it's a phobia, right? It's on the CNS. It's a central nervous system. I can't help it. And when I was going over one of the obstacles, I was shaking so badly, and I did it anyway, but because it's all about pushing through. But whenever I was shaking, there was this girl next to me who was crawling on the cargo net, and she's like, oh, you don't have to be scared. It's safe. And I was just like, oh, please, I'm sorry. I know. It's just my behavioral response. I'm sorry. But yeah, like phobia, like someone who was homophobic would actually be like shaking whenever they saw someone who liked, other men or whoever's of their same gender. So just call him a bigoted asshole like every other dickhead, and then be done with it. But I guess I have an affinity for clinical terms and the level. Like when people say I'm OCD, I'm like, it's a normal thing to want things organized. It's pretty normal. No, it's really bothering my OCD right now. I gotta fix that.
Yeah. Because I'm like, that kind of cheapens people who really do have a phobia or people who really have OCD. Because like I
Right.
got OCD and you're like, it's like when people say like I got like PTSD, I have flashbacks. I'm like, don't fucking say that, dude. I'm a veteran. That's really shitty. Like you find another term. Or like some people call someone retarded. I'm like, dude, I worked with people who had intellectual disabilities. Don't fucking use that word. It cheapens it. It makes their sound. It's just shitty. So anyway.
Yeah, that is literally the worst when people use words wrong.
Nice. I see. It's good.
He's got it.
Yeah, that was nice. I kind of wish I would have fell for it and been like, yeah, I know.
Oh man, seriously though, fuck
Alright.
the Pope.
Yeah, PSA over. Fuck the Pope. I have popophobia.
I'm a popophobic. Right. Papaphobic.
Oh yeah, that's what they say, papalphobic or something.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, so why fuck the Pope? Why do you have a specific vendetta against this guy? I mean, it seems like, let me just say my point of view. Like, I'm on Facebook. I
Tell
don't
me where you're going
follow.
from.
I don't follow like politics at all. It's one of my downfalls. I just became exasperated with it at one point because I was used to be a staunch Republican, and then I realized like that there's just a lot of propaganda on both sides, and then I was just like, oh, I'm just done with it. So I'm like this grizzled old veteran that like refuses to learn the right way.
So jaded.
Because so jaded. So,
I've seen some shit on Bill O'Reilly.
it's a no spin factor, so you can trust it. It says it right there in the title.
They said there wasn't spin, but I felt like they were spinning. I can't trust anything. I
Ah.
opened up a treasure chest on Zelda, and there were just rupees inside.
Now
I
you got
already-
trust issues.
I already had full rupees. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's me, like, completely ignorant. I see people post things, and it's constantly like good stuff, right? Like it says like, hey, the Pope says that evolution's totally a thing. Don't be stupid, right?
Yep. Or the Pope washes some guy's foot, and he's poor, and he totally washed his foot though, and he's the Pope. So
Yeah, that was another one.
What a people's Pope. Hashtag people's Pope.
There was another progressive thing he did. What was it?
Was it the one where he said atheists would go to heaven, and then like the Vatican PR machine was like, oh no, he was just kidding about that. Tried to read it in.
Oh man. Yeah, I think it was that one. So
Yeah, no,
so he seems
He's been a
he
media
seems like,
darling.
yeah, he seems like a good guy from my point of view. He's a regular Mother Teresa. Uh-oh.
I fucking hate Mother Teresa too. We'll get into that in a different episode.
Oh my god. Okay. All right. So let's hear it. What's up with this guy?
I hate that she's the go-to like person for like the most saintly person we've ever known. She was not great.
Well, okay. So my take on it is she did a lot of like. Okay, I don't know anything
What
about.
did she do exactly? What do you know that she did,
Agnes.
and what have you heard about her?
Oh, that's a good point. I know nothing. So my conceptualization from like I couldn't tell you like any specific like stimulus that I had like tell you about it, but I have this notion that she went around Europe and like the whole world, like the uncivilized world, and I don't know, like I guess started orphanages. Something about orphanages, right?
Okay.
A lot of poor people. She helped poor people, like got them off the streets or something.
That's what you've heard?
That's really it. Other than that, it's just context. People say Mother
Other than that,
Teresa.
it's just like she's the go-to example for like a saintly person who's a really good, nice.
Yeah. Okay, so that's my take on her too.
Okay. Wow.
So set me straight.
All right. Fuck Mother Teresa too. We'll just have like fuck overrated Catholics episode today.
Okay, it's a little lengthy for the title, but I'll see what I can do.
I can't even.
So the Pope isn't quite as progressive as I've been led to believe. Is that, or is it that he does other shady shit too?
Yeah, no. Okay, let me just start off with this article from Time Magazine from their 100 most influential people. It's called Pope Francis, a moral leader in word and deed. Rare is the leader who makes us want to be better people. Pope Francis is such a leader. His Holiness has moved us with his message of inclusion, especially for the poor, the marginalized, and the outcast. But it's been his deeds, his bearing, the gestures at once simple and profound, embracing the sick, ministering to the homeless, washing the feet of young prisoners that have inspired us all. Pope Francis reminds us in ways that words alone cannot that no matter our station in life, we are bound by moral obligations to one another. His example challenges us to live out those obligations through work, to alleviate poverty, reduce inequality, and promote peace, to feed the hungry, shelter the homeless, care for the sick, and open new doors of opportunity and vision of possibility for everyone. His message of love and inclusion, his regard for the least of these, distills the essence of Jesus' teachings and is a tonic for a cynical age. May we heed his humble example. By Barack Obama.
Oh, really? The president said that.
Yes.
Wow.
And he's not alone. Every liberal, every left-leaning humanist, everyone is just lining up to lick Pope Francis's balls. Partly because his predecessor was just so terrible that, you know, it's kind of like following Bush as president. Like, people are just going to like you at first because you're not Bush and you're not Pope Wiener Schnitzel, like the German guy that was before him.
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, let's just get this straight. This is a guy that's been hiding child molesters from the law. That's who we're praising. This is a guy who's been telling Africa not to use condoms. So if you follow cause and effect, you could say this is the guy with the blood of a lot of babies with AIDS on his shoulders. Am I being hyperbolic to point that out?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I get it.
All right, but, you know, maybe these are just broad criticisms. After all, the Catholic Church has been doing that forever. Catholic Church has been you know, telling Africans to spread their STDs willy-nilly forever. That's not even new anymore. And the molesting of children, that's almost cliche at this point. Like, we can't really expect them to crack down on that. That's like something a normal corporation would do, like a Walmart. We can't hold a church to that kind of standard.
To that high of a moral standard, you're right.
Right. So I asked our friend JT for specific examples of things the Pope said that were horrendous. I had a few in mind, but I knew JT would know more. He gave me like 7 from this year, 2015.
Wow.
The Pope is a horrible person. Let's just start with the one that I was thinking of. Do you remember Charlie Hebdo?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just for those people who are listening far in the future, when these attacks are either no longer commonplace or extremely commonplace, what went down there?
So my understanding is that it was a French cartoonist who he, of course, did a cartoon, a short cartoon about kind of poking fun at Muhammad, and he died. He got killed.
Not he died. They died. There were 14 deaths.
Whoa. Okay, I didn't know that.
They killed a lot of cartoonists and a police officer who was trying to stop them from killing cartoonists, because in Paris you can't just kill people who hurt your feelings normally.
Right.
And the reaction to that, there were 2 reactions I heard out of liberals. One was the Bill Maher kind of reaction of, that's absolutely not okay. You cannot shoot somebody because they hurt your feelings with a cartoon. I don't care what the reason is. You cannot murder people because your feelings are hurt.
Mm-hmm.
That's the position I took.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's the right position to take.
Seems reasonable, yeah.
But far drowning that out from the left, I heard this. I don't condone murder, but, followed by words.
Wait, you mean like? Wait, is this like the people who are kind of like really jumping on the Islamophobia? Oh God, there I said it again. That train.
Yeah, I don't condone murder, but they you know, the Islamic refugees in Paris are treated very poorly. There's a lot of racism in France. Or I don't condone murder, but, you know, they really were provoking them with those offensive cartoons. Or I don't promote murder, but anytime you say I don't promote murder and then you start to justify why it was kind of okay that those people died because they were kind of asking for it, fuck you.
Yeah, you're basically like those people who say, I'm not a racist, but how many black people does it take to, I don't know, screw in a light bulb, and you know you're about to hear something totally racist. You're like, I'm not interested in hearing this. Yeah, exactly. Like, hell, I say this in marriage therapy. I give a little, like a kind of a crash course in the very beginning. I'm like, I'm going to lay some ground rules for you. Number 1, we don't say right and wrong in here. There's no such thing as right and wrong, and if there is, none of us here are experts in that, so I'm sure we've all can think of times we were wrong when we thought we were right. It's not really a useful thing. So from now on, we're going to be saying helpful for blank. Like, it's helpful for our marriage if we spend more time together, instead of I think we need to spend more time together, and if we don't, you're wrong. Like, that's not helpful. And another one of the things I say is that like don't ever say but and then follow it up with something. Like say
Right.
I love you, but it gets on my nerves when you don't do the dishes. Don't say that. Say I love you. And I also have a problem where I get upset whenever you don't do the dishes. How do we figure this out? Like that's so much better. That one simple word has so much power. So like, it's if you said I'm not a racist and I still think this joke is funny, like I would lead you more credence than otherwise if you say but. And actually, just don't tell those jokes. Those are horrible. But like, more importantly, yeah, like same thing here. Don't ever condone murder. Like, I don't believe you if you say "but" after you say it. Whatever
Yeah.
you say, it doesn't count.
Don't give me an excuse of why it was still kind of okay. So here's the Pope's reaction to this. He's a religious world leader, so he weighs in. Here's what he says. There are so many people who speak badly about religions or other religions, who make fun of them, who make a game out of the religions of others. They are provocateurs. And what happens to them is what would happen to anyone if he says a curse word against my mother. There is a limit. And then he said he would punch them in the nose, and they would have it coming.
Whoa, he apologized for that, for those murders?
Yeah, he essentially said, like, they kind of had it coming when you make fun of someone. Like, if you made fun of my mother, I'd punch you in the nose. This is the same thing. This is not the same thing, you wrinkled old... Oh, no. This is not the same thing.
Wow, yeah, we hold freedom of speech pretty strongly here in America, and my sense is that that égalité, liberté thing in France is kind of a big deal too.
Yeah, no, they
So,
hold it
like,
pretty
that really
highly there too, and it's pretty offensive to say, like, they were the provocateurs, the people with the cartoons, with the pens and papers, they were the provocateurs. That makes them sound like they were the aggressors in that little altercation of people jumping with automatic weapons and shooting 14 people.
yeah,
And then
that's
saying, if
insane.
someone
Like,
says a
they
curse
had
word
it
against my
coming.
mother, there is a limit. No, there isn't a limit. No matter what horrible things you say about any religion or religious people or anything, you're never justified in causing physical harm to someone over words. I'm not a religious person. You're His Holiness. We capitalize His and Your Holiness when we talk about you. But I'm going to give you some morality here. It's not ever okay to harm someone if they use words against you.
Yeah, exactly. Without demonstrable effect, like if they say like I don't know if you're the let me see I don't know like with slander I guess or yeah
But even then,
libel.
even with libel, it's never okay to shoot them in the face.
No, yeah, murder is never okay, like in general. But God, like yeah, the death penalty. This is almost like slut shaming. It's like, well, they
Yeah,
had it
it's
coming.
exactly
And
like
it's like
victim blaming.
it's like no, they were well within their rights to do
They were
whatever they
doing their
wanted
job.
to.
They were cartoonists at a political satire. Like, that was their job, was to make fun of things.
Yeah,
It'd
if
be
a
like
woman
killing the
wants to,
makers of South Park.
if a woman wants to dress like sexily or anything she wants and walk through like Central Park at night, she should not. She should have a reasonable expectation to be treated like a fucking human. And if she gets raped, that's that guy's fault, not hers. Like there's no. Yes, it's more dangerous in Central Park at night. I get it, but like you don't blame the victim, and that's the same thing here. It's like they got murdered, and yes, there's a reasonable expectation that people of the Islamic faith, especially the religious extremists, are going to get offended by this, and the extremists are going to get so offended they might want to murder you. But that's slut shaming. That's
Yeah,
here.
and
It's
it's
like that's
especially not
cartoonish.
okay to say that. Like, it's not like they were in Saudi Arabia. Like, if someone walked in and said "fuck Muhammad" in the middle of Saudi Arabia, I don't think he should die, but I would also question his judgment, right?
Right.
But if you're in Paris, you have a reasonable expectation of freedom of the press.
Mhm.
So don't be like, oh, well, they should have known. There's a line. They crossed that line. I don't know what they were expecting.
To live like people
To
and who
be
criticize
living
things
in
on a regular basis.
2015?
Yeah.
Not the Dark Ages? So
Yeah, that's really
yeah,
unfortunate.
this is the Pope that we're all just lining up to fillet in the media. But that's just one thing. Last month in February, he dropped some child rearing advice. I thought you would like this because you're something of an expert. You and your wife are raising 2 children, and you both have a great deal of training in the matter, both on the job and academic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So here's what he said. And to a general audience in St. Peter's Square. So in St. Peter's Square, he gives these little addresses every so often. And he was talking about the importance of a good father within the family. I once heard at a wedding a father say, "I sometimes have to hit my children a little bit, but never in the face so as not to demean them. How nice, I thought. He has a sense of dignity, the Pope said. When he punishes, he does it right and moves on. It's okay to spank your children as long as you do it with dignity. What does that even mean?
I don't even.
Now, I'm no psychologist, but I'm pretty sure science kind of confirms the opposite. Like you're kind of fucking your kids up if you spank them.
Yeah. I am a no, I'm not a psychologist. Another year, a year or two, and I'll be a psychologist. So I have all the training. No, yeah, that is absolutely not true. There is research to show, like research in general shows that like corporal punishment is a bad thing and has negative predictors for outcomes, right? For desirable outcome variables like prosociality, like economic status, like education level, happiness, depression, anxiety, things like that, right? All of those have been positively correlated with the incidences of corporal punishment, so spanking or striking on the hand or whatever, just striking a child in some way. Although I should admit that there were some methodological problems with those. They didn't control for a lot of things. They were just rough longitudinal, studies. So once they controlled for parental demeanor, I won't get into like all the nonsense, but there's basically two. There's a few different parental types, but there's two big ones: authoritarian and authoritative. And authoritarian is kind of like, think of like a sort of a what's that? Sound of Music. Remember the dad?
Yeah.
Sound of Music.
Lighting them all up by height.
Yep, exactly.
Von
and like,
Traps.
Yep. You don't question like the adult, and you always just exactly do what they say no matter what, and you expect them to be little automatons, right? Then there's authoritative, which is like you're an authority, sure, but you're not like ruling by an iron fist. You're just you give them boundaries, and basically you don't tell them what to do. You tell them a subset of things they can do. So you say like okay, so you've got some chores, okay, and these chores are you can do anytime before bed. So that would be authoritative, and that's like my style, right? Because that's been constantly shown as like the most positive predictor for healthy outcomes.
Right, but what if you want to hit your child, but you want to do it with dignity?
Well, okay, yeah. Here's the thing. The funny thing is, those individuals. One of the recent meta-analyses I haven't read in the past 4 years, but that's pretty. I don't think another meta-analysis came out since then, but showed that if you control for parental style, striking your kid, spanking, up to I think it was 2, maybe 3 times a year, actually didn't have positive or negative outcomes as long as it was not. There's a couple stipulations and I don't exactly remember them, but as long as it's not your primary method, you use the timeout method. So unfortunately, like I just put my foot in my mouth there because I've always said spanking is super bad no matter what. But apparently, there's a couple cases in which it doesn't seem to be negatively impacting. However,
you gotta do it with dignity.
With that said, I always ask the parents this one thing. I always say, so why don't you just push your kid down? That's going to stop them from, putting their hand in the cookie jar, right? Just push them down. Like if you see them up there on the chair, push them down the ground. And they're like, are you kidding? I'm like, no, why don't you? I mean, they'll learn their lesson. They got hurt. And they're like, well, no, I mean, because I could do the same thing just by, patting them on the butt. And I'm like, oh, so you kind of have a responsibility to like keep your kid away from a certain amount of physical harm if there's a better way to do it. And they're like, right. And I'm like, okay, that's called behaviorism. I'm about to teach you how to do it. And then you go on from there. So like with that said, yes, you can strike them apparently 2 to 3 times a week as long as you're parenting correctly otherwise. But why would you do that if there's a better way to do it, which is behaviorism?
Right, and what does it mean to hit your child with dignity? Like, hitting a child is just inherently demeaning. Like, they're small and you're large. They're going to feel demeaned by that. There's no dignified way to do it. And you don't come out very dignified either. You're beating a child.
Right.
And it's going against science, which is exactly what happened when they said the Catholic Church announced that condoms spread AIDS. So also goes the opposite of what science has confirmed. It's weird how God doesn't actually whisper the right things to the Pope. And I'm going to quote JT here. He says, here's the sad thing. Millions of Catholic parents will give more authority to an ill-informed man in a silly hat than to research psychologists with decades of research and education in the field.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to refrain from ranting here, but I really want to rant right now. There are so many people who feel that they're experts, even wonderful people that I admire, like Neil deGrasse Tyson. Badass, awesome, rock star, deserves to be. Goes out on stage, people shout his name, cheer his name. I'm right there with him. Guy's a badass. Occasionally, still, on his Star Talk radio, he'll talk about things that are outside of his field. And one of these being how to raise children. And I was like, oh, God, NDT, bro, you gotta not. There are people who research this.
Right.
It's not
and
just
we talked about this last week, Neil deGrasse Tyson being an ultra-crepidarian.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so yeah. There's just be careful. there are like ways to approach life that are demonstrable, that can be researched via the scientific method. And guess what? They probably have been. Like, psychology is a huge field with a ton of people that have been doing this for a century now. So just make sure, just be careful. Like, you're gonna make yourself look like an idiot, or more importantly, you're gonna actively harm people if you're talking outside of your expertise. But that's the funny thing about religion. We've already talked about this. They feel like they have, if you have divine inspiration, you're an expert on all things. So.
Yes. Well, don't worry, because the next week he gave another little tidbit of wisdom. Pope Francis has tried couples who chose not to have children, saying the decision was a selfish act. He says, a society with a greedy generation that doesn't want to surround itself with children, that considers themselves above all worrisome, a weight, a risk, is a depressed society. The choice not to have children is selfish. Life rejuvenates and acquires energy when it multiplies, is enriched, not impoverished. First of all, dude, you took a vow of celibacy. How are you going to tell us it's selfish not to have kids? And secondly, and as a guy who does not have kids and doesn't want kids, how often have I ever asked you, Jeremiah, to watch my kids for a night so I can go do something with my wife?
That would be 0 times.
0 times. You know how many times people have asked me to do that and I've done it?
A lot.
All the time.
Yeah.
So who's selfish? Life is not always enriched when you have kids. It is for some people. For some people, it's not. And you want to impoverish the world? Let's keep having kids that outpace our resources. Like, let's talk about selfishness. Like, let's. Oh.
Yeah,
I hate that.
You can replace all all morality, like these moral positives. Like, here's a maxim. A maxim is that you're not happy without a family, without kids, right? That's this cultural maxim that he's putting forth. You can replace all that with simple values-based psychology stuff, where you just say, I don't know, so what do you want out of life? Like, whenever you're done, you're on your dying bed, at that moment, you look back and you have no regrets. What did you do in your life? Like, that's one way to ask the question. Another one is, like, you walk up to all your friends. They all show up. Let's say it's your bachelor party before you get married, or some other big event, right? Mm-hmm. Like, if you're not going to get married, whatever. And they're all there. You walk in and they're all talking about you, and it makes you, like, you kind of tear up, and you're like, whoa, dude, these guys are saying the best things about me. What are they saying? What are they talking about? What behaviors are they describing, right? And these are your values. These are the things you want. And like, if you don't want kids, if you're not like, oh, I want to be a super dad, right? Like, then so what? Like, there's no moral imperative there that you need.
You're being selfish. The Pope said so. He's got a funny hat.
That's what I'm talking about. Like, this moral positivism completely crushes values-based psychology, which is a good thing, and it's the beginning of a lot of different, like, evidence-based treatments for, things like depression, borderline personality disorder, etc., life problems in general. If it comes to adjustment disorders, it's just. People, a lot of times it blows their mind because they're like, well, you tell me the right thing to do. That's what I had this lady saying that over and over who had depression. I was like, please don't. I don't know. I'm an expert in normality and ways to get better. I'm not an expert in what's good for you. Like, you tell me what's, what you want, and I'll get you there. So anyway, it's insanity, man. Like, I can't believe that people they think there's a one-size-fits-all for everyone, and that's crazy to me, and I actively discourage that in therapy. But whatever, what do I know? Again, I'm only in a field that studies this with science. He's got a funny hat, so he's good.
He does. He has a funny hat. And as President Obama said about him, his regard for the least of these distills the essence of Jesus' teachings and is a message of love and inclusion. Well, it's funny he should say that, because the week after the quote I just gave you, the Pope had another fun thing to say.
Oh, no.
He claimed people who manipulate their bodies are similar to Herods that destroy, that plot designs of death, that disfigure the face of man and woman, destroying creation. The comments were made in a new book published in Italy, Pope Francis, This Economy Kills, calling on Christians to safeguard God's order of creation. Here's the fun part. Let's think of the nuclear arms, of the possibility to annihilate in a few instants in a very high number of human beings, he says. Let's also think of genetic manipulation, of the manipulation of life, or of the gender theory that does not recognize the order of creation. With this attitude, man commits a new sin, that against God, the Creator. The true custody of creation does not have anything to do with the ideologies that consider man like an accident, like a problem to eliminate. God has placed man and woman in the summit of creation, has entrusted them with the earth. The design of the Creator is written in nature. If we fail this responsibility, if we do not take care of our brothers in all of creation, destruction advances. He's comparing transgender people to nuclear weapons.
Holy shit.
Yeah, he says, if you want to maximize your own happiness and alter your body to better fit how you feel on the inside, you're basically a weapon designed to end lives on a massive scale. I mean, it's pretty obvious. It's a great metaphor.
Wow, dude, I'm like speechless with that one. That's pretty incredible that he'd almost explicitly lay that out. Like to imply it, a lot of times people have stupid beliefs, and they
Hmm.
say it, and then you kind of call them on it. You're like, wait, so you're saying, like, for example, people would rather live next to a pedophile than an atheist. This is, during this research that was done a while back. And but I always suspected because the way they asked the questions, it wasn't a versus like that. It wasn't like, would you rather live next to a pedophile? What percentage of desirability would that be, right? And then what desirability would be an atheist? It was along with a lot of other questions, and as it turns out, atheists fell below pedophile and murder and rapist. But like I always wondered, I was like, wait, but hold on, people do that all the time. Like, what if we used a little cognitive dissonance and we asked them? We just said, would you rather live next to an atheist or a pedophile, then I wonder how they'd respond in that case. But this, like, so that's an implication, right? An implication that they're worse, but not explicitly saying that. But this
Hmm.
guy, he's explicitly saying and trying to emphasize
Yeah. No, he's definitely
transgender.
he's saying like if you have a penis and you'd rather have a vagina or the other way around, that's destruction, like nuclear weapons. No, you know what destruction is? Is when churches propagate fear and loathing of homosexuals and transsexuals, and then they get killed all the time. Like that's a pretty common hate ground or hate crime. But no, let's someone wants to alter their genitalia, therefore nuclear weapons. Give me a fucking break.
That's horrible, man. I don't know. Like I
And
had no idea.
And when President Obama said his message of love and inclusion, his regard for the least of these, who is not the least of these if not like the people most outcast by society?
Yeah, like transgender. That's
Like
horrible.
transgendered, exactly like transgendered. Okay, you want to hear another fun one?
Yeah, why not? We're on a roll.
This one's from November, so it's like 4 months ago. This is just all within the last 6 months. This is the great thing about this Pope Frankenbeans here. Everyone loves him. All right, this is from Vatican Radio. The Pope says this: the spirit of curiosity. What do you think about the spirit of curiosity? What's he going to say about it? I mean, this is the liberal Pope that everyone loves, right? He's the one who said evolution's probably a real thing, and we all just lost our fucking minds because he was like, hey guys, science is real. Like, yeah, welcome to 2015, man. Like, thank you. We're not Galileo. We figured that out a long time ago.
Scientists aren't specifically wrong about this one thing. Yeah,
Right, this one
that would be
specific
weird.
thing. Maybe come out with something about climate change or something that's actually that your constituents are opposing very actively. So anyway, what do you think he said about the spirit of curiosity?
Maybe it drove the Enlightenment, the scientific age, and it's one of the most important things in humanity because we move forward in our knowledge and therefore our quality of life.
Yeah, and maybe he like maybe he attributed that to like God moving upon people, inspiring scientists to be
Oh yeah, yeah.
curious.
Hmm.
That's what I thought he was going to say because I was still kind of buying into the myth that he wasn't a total dick and fuck that guy.
Yeah.
Here's what he actually said. The spirit of curiosity generates confusion and distances a person from the spirit of wisdom, which brings peace.
Wait, wisdom. Wait, you get to wisdom without curiosity?
No, yeah, curiosity generates confusion and actually takes you away from wisdom.
Oh,
No,
maybe we're defining wisdom differently because I.
and maybe we're defining confusion differently, because doesn't curiosity cure confusion because you figure things out? Isn't that like the best thing about humans is we're really curious and we figure things out a lot?
I
Isn't
would
that
say
where
that's
we get like medicine and science and cell phones and the radio that he was reporting through?
yeah, like somebody like falls down next to you and their lips are blue and they got spots all over them and you're like, I wonder what happened there. And I wonder how to keep myself from getting that, and maybe from other people. That's called medicine. That's kind of important.
Came from curiosity, actually.
Yeah.
So, oh no, the spirit of curiosity actually distances one from God, according to Pope Francis.
Okay. Well, thanks for that. There's too much to say on that. I don't
Uh,
believe you.
okay, well, let's go back to sticking up for the least of these and messages of tolerance and inclusion. I'm going to go ahead and quote Saturday Night Live from this. This week, gay marriage was officially condemned by an older single man wearing a cape. He opened an interreligious conference on the complementarity of men and women in marriage and sex. He said marriage between a man and woman is a fundamental pillar of society and that children have the right to grow up with a mother and a father. He's actually actively trying to stop gay marriage from being passed in various countries.
Okay.
Various Catholic countries that are like debating it. He shows up there and actively is like, no, guys, um, we're kind of against it now. Marriage is a fundamental between a man and woman is a fundamental pillar of society. No, fuck you. It's not a fundamental pillar of anything. It's just something we do a lot. Like if people weren't getting married, we'd still have coupling for life. We'd still have people having and raising children. We'd still have loving parents caring for children. We wouldn't have marriage on a piece of paper. But guess what? The human species got along for a long time before the institution of marriage came around.
Yeah, like
Marriage is a ceremony. Like love is the important thing. That's what's fundamental.
I don't even know how to approach that because there's so many things. Like, okay, so what in particular? So in psychology, we do something called component analysis, right? So if somebody says, "Hey, whenever I do this thing called rebirthing therapy is like literally, this is not a thing, by the way, but this is what they call it a therapy. You roll up a carpet. So like I take you and I put you on the ground, and then I roll you up in a carpet and I sit on top of it, and I have you crawl out one side to reenact.
Yeah, that's stupid. I'm not
the
doing
anxiety of it has to do with Freudian theory, which is obviously not real. And to help like relive that and kind of, I don't know, like work off the anxiety, right? Oh, by the way, this is the most. Guess who does this? Of the subgroups of mental health, quote unquote, professionals. Guess who does this the most? We got social workers, counselors, psychologists, and psychiatrists. Which one do you think?
I want to say counselors.
Nope, psychiatrists. Psychiatrists. Those are medical doctors.
That was my second guess.
That took a couple classes in psychology and then went on a psychology rotation. Again, psychiatrists are not mental health professionals. I debate that, and I will at any day of the week. And I will stand against any psychiatrist, no matter how well researched they are. And I, with just my psychological training, I guarantee I could school them on anything. I'd be like, what's the differential diagnosis between, I name a number of different disorders, guarantee I'd school them. It'd be like mental health Jeopardy, it'd be great. But anyway, sorry, I digress here. So rebirthing therapy, like the idea is you say, all right, so component analysis, what parts of that work? Because he says people get better when I use this, and then people don't. And then maybe they even show some research like, oh look, people who had that versus no therapy got 5% better, as far as like measuring like distress levels. Then of course I'm like, there's no theoretical reason to believe that would work. What are they doing in there that works? So what you do is you break apart the pieces and you find the part that works and the other parts that don't work, or even contraindicated, right? That work against the main effect, right? Yes. And that's what I'd be probably doing or be wanting to do here is like breaking apart what like the entire what was the original claim?
Well, complementarity between men and women is the basis of marriage and the family.
Yeah, like
children have the right to grow up with their biological mother and father, and which is kind of an ironic claim from an organization that owns and operates a lot of orphanages, and a lot of straight parents who are cruel or neglectful kind of give their kids up because they don't care about them to the orphanages, and then gay people step up and offer to give those children a loving environment to grow up in, which I believe is probably beneficial to the child. But what do I know? I'm just looking at what's actually happening.
This came from the reason why I said that I remember now is because there was a study originally that showed that a man and a woman produced offspring more typically well or with better outcomes than gays or lesbians, but they didn't control for literally anything. So they controlled for like socioeconomic status, and they also controlled for what were all the controls? I mean, I read the study like 9 years ago, so I forget all the controls. But once they control for the obvious things, what you do is I won't get into statistics, but basically you search for covariates, and once you find them, you throw them in there. It's real easy to do, and no one fucking does it, even in the medical literature. And so I'm like,
you already have your conclusion before you start the study. You don't you're looking for what's going to support what you already think.
Yeah, and it's doing this is so easy to find covariation, and then just run the ANCOVA or MANCOVA again. It doesn't matter. Run the statistics again while controlling for it, right? And once they did that, they're like, oh, actually, gays and lesbians actually produce offspring, or they raise offspring that are actually better off than a guy and a girl. And more importantly, the average marriage, the average child from a straight home is actually a single parent from a single parent. So, shit, I guess it might even be better. Far better.
But we definitely can see what's happening right now, and that's that you're letting you have orphanages. So clearly your system's not working super great altogether. And this is the guy who famously led the church's opposition to legalizing gay marriage in his native Argentina. So, like, I don't know where we're getting all this, like, love and acceptance for the least of these, tolerance and this. I don't know why the media has to continually fillet this guy. Like, just because he's admitted that science is real and he washed some guy's feet and he said atheists get to go to heaven, just kidding.
Just kidding.
Like,
Backspace.
I think what pisses me off is because the last pope, he was just obviously, like, he was Palpatine, right? Like, he was just obviously a PR nightmare. He was pretty clearly evil. No one took him seriously. But this guy actually has everyone's ear. Like, he has the entire world enraptured. He was Time Magazine's Man of the Year. And he's wasting that. It's just more of a wolf in sheep's clothing than anything else. Like, he could make positive change. Like, how hard would it be to say, you know what, from now on, zero tolerance policy on raping kids. We're going to be just like Walmart and every other major business, and if you get caught raping a kid while on the company clock, we're going to not only fire you, but turn you over to the police. You're going to go to jail.
Yeah, or someone who works with kids a lot, like Disneyland.
Yeah.
If they didn't have a policy like that, that would be fucked up.
Like, if I was a shift manager at Disneyland and you came in and I had like my Mickey Mouse costume and the pants were off and I was just fucking a little boy in the ass like on my smoke break, and you would fire me probably if you were my supervisor, and you would call the police, definitely. But if I was a priest doing the same thing, I just get quietly transferred and then some hush money is paid to the kid's family so it doesn't go to trial. Oh, and by the way, that hush money, tax-free, subsidized by you and I and every other taxpayer.
That's fucked up, man.
So speaking of that, let me give you the last story that JT sent my way. This one's from November of 2014. It starts off with Donald McGuire, who is a priest. Jesuit officials in Chicago will pay $19.6 million to settle a civil lawsuit brought by 6 men who claim they were molested by a former priest and one-time spiritual advisor to Mother Teresa. We're gonna have to do a Mother Teresa episode eventually. Anyway, this is her Yoda to her Luke. Donald McGuire, this is the guy that was her spiritual advisor and priest, formerly of Oak Lawn, he's currently serving a 25-year prison term after being convicted in Chicago in 2008 of federal charges that he brought a minor across state lines to engage in sex. He was also convicted in 2006 of molesting 2 boys in Wisconsin during the 1960s. Now, those 2 boys in Wisconsin, definitely not the only 2, because this clearly is a pattern, but we could have stopped it in 2006, but we didn't. In 2008, anyway, the amount of settlement is reflective of the magnitude of misconduct by the top Jesuit officials. The $19.6 million settlement against the Chicago province for the Site of Jesus was reached in January. Now, this isn't about McGuire. This is giving you some backstory. This is about a guy named Reverend Robert J. Geisinger. Now, remember, the McGuire thing, like, you're probably like, why are you even talking about this? Priests rape boys all the time. That's just how it happens. And then the Catholic Church settles it. All right, so Reverend Robert J. Geisinger was the second highest ranking official among the Chicago Jesuits in the 1990s when leaders were facing multiple abuse complaints against the Reverend Donald J. McGuire, a globe-trotting priest with many influential supporters, including motherfucking Teresa of Calcutta. But the Jesuits failed to notify police or take effective steps to prevent McGuire from continuing to molest minors. Documents examined by the Globe, most of them church records produced during lawsuits filed by McGuire's victims, showed Geisinger had detailed knowledge of the complaints against McGuire as early as 1995 and advised officials in Chicago of how to discipline McGuire as late as August 2002. He was finally convicted in 2006. So basically, he knew it was happening and he was trying to keep it internal because we can't have the police interfering with the affairs of the church, right?
Yeah, of course.
So how does the yeah, right, they can't lose any of their authority. They can't actually see these priests go to jail because that would be bad PR. And if there's one thing an omnipotent, all-loving God hates worse than molesting children and raping little boys, it's bad PR.
Fair enough.
So how does the Vatican react? This is the new Vatican, right? This is the Pope Frank himself, Vatican. Do they boot Geisinger from the church? Do they excommunicate him like they excommunicated those nuns who wanted women to be able to be priests?
Yeah, I know who he is. Yeah.
Yeah, no, they didn't. They did not excommunicate him. They did not string him up as an example. They didn't even reprimand him. Here's what they did. This is his punishment. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
They put him in charge of policing child molesting priests.
What?
An American Jesuit appointed, this is a quote from the article, an American Jesuit appointed by Pope Francis to oversee the prosecution of priests accused of sexually abusing minors allowed a Chicago priest to remain in the ministry for years after learning of his history of sexual abuse towards young teenage men. This is Reverend Robert J. Geisinger. He was then selected by the Pope in September to be the Vatican's, quote, promoter of justice, unquote, the second in command among Chicago Jesuits in the 1990s when allegations of sexual abuse complaints were levied against. Okay, so he was the guy who, as we established, he knew all this was happening and just tried to hide it. He is now the promoter of justice, which is like making the fox the promoter of chicken safety in the hen house.
Yeah, I was like, that would be like finding a police officer who got busted for being a dirty cop for taking money from the Italian mafia, and then making him the captain of internal affairs for corruption. That would be retarded. That would be ridiculous. I mean, what is wrong with people?
Yeah, no, and this is in the Raw story, the article. Pope Francis names U.S. priest who hid reports of abuse to be Vatican prosecutor of sex crimes.
Okay, well.
Pope Francis.
Good game. Yeah.
Fuck the Pope. Are you with me?
Yeah, I'm starting to get there.
Yeah, fuck the Pope. So beyond the fact that it's a really easy fix to stop, like I said before, just zero tolerance policy. If you're raping a little boy, you're out of the church. Also, we report you to the police. That would be a real change. If he announced that tomorrow, I would just take it all back and I'd say, wow, he is the reformer everyone's painting him as. Or if he announced tomorrow, hey guys, you know what? Condoms are fine. They don't spread AIDS. In fact, you should use them. If you're in Africa, there's a lot of AIDS down there. I would eat so much crow, and I would happily do it because there'd be a lot fewer dead people, a lot fewer dead babies of AIDS. There'd be any action that makes less dead AIDS babies in Africa, I can get behind. I can forgive a lot of Pope nonsense if he would just do that. But no, he doesn't. He doesn't take he's got the ear of millions of Catholics around the world. And instead of using that to make things good, he does a lot of bullshit PR moves like, oh, look at me wash some guy's feet and pose and smile for the camera and, hey guys, evolution's a real thing. That's why we need vaccinations. No fuck. Like, what if, I'm very upset about the Pope. Just because he could have been so great, because he could have been that reform Pope that everyone's painting him as. He could have been the guy that Obama described in Time magazine as someone who inspires us all with his deeds and gestures and shows us what it is to be a good person. He could have been that person, but instead he does these token bullshit, like, nonsense moves and then continues the same old child raping, baby killing Catholic bullshit.
Oh yeah, I can definitely see that criticism now. Fuck the Pope. Like, I'm in the camp now.
All right, so fuck the Pope. Let's play us out with some Tim Minchin.
Sounds good.